Grand Rising, everybody. Grand Rising. Okay, going over 123. Today is 124. I need you to pay close attention to the number 1, the number 2, the fire, and the triple dollar signs. 950 on 123 in Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, it only took 22 hours. Top 2 numbers, focus on the top 5. I promise the first 2 will manifest from 122 to 130. It dropped on 123. Ladies and gentlemen, 9314. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the very last number you see is a very strong, high probability combination. Triple dollar signs will manifest 115 to 123. I met my deadline on that promised prediction. Here I go showing off, ladies and gentlemen. I told you on 115 you would see this drop. Look, by 123. Deadline date. 2 different predictions. My numbers don't lie. Ladies and gentlemen, 1038. 1038 is what I promise to manifest for my VIP. Pay close attention. It was the number 1 big money pattern. So again, if you keep seeing too many numbers, you are under a spell. The number 1 number right there. Invest in the best. And I am the best at what I do. 083. Ladies and gentlemen, 083. 117 to 125. I promised I could make that happen. Straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 486. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised to win. You need to focus on my top 5 3 digits. I promise the first 2 will manifest from 915 to 123. Deadline date met every single time. Ladies and gentlemen, 7240. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised. Look, if you want to win, you need to focus on the top 5 4 digits. They will manifest 118 to 126. Look, I also guarantee the number 3 position big money pattern in Georgia. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Ladies and gentlemen, 3, 4, 1, 5. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise that big money pattern would go to Ohio between the dates 115 and 124. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go showing off again. Your very last number you see will manifest first. You see it for yourself. Triple dollar signed it as proof. You would see it go to Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, 709. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 number. You see it for yourself. I promised you would see it between 116 and 124. We saw it on 123. Ladies and gentlemen, 220. Ladies and gentlemen, my only motherfucking number on fire. You see it for yourself. And guess what? When you see me circle the state a bunch of times, that means it came from that state. So again, between the dates 121 to 129, only big money pattern on fire. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. Ladies and gentlemen, 803. Boom, boom, boom. Manifested straight for Florida, 117 to 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 235. Ladies and gentlemen, manifested straight. Promised only 4 hours straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 5447. Ladies and gentlemen, a black sheep, don't lie. It was on time to manifest between the dates 120 and 128. Here I go showing off black sheep again, letting us know 2 times is not a coincidence. 116 to 125. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, check it out. 184, 184, 184. Promised! Ladies and gentlemen, 9583. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I triple dollar signed it. I promised you would see it. 121 to 129. Ladies and gentlemen, 533. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my only big money pattern on fire would manifest straight between the dates. Look, on 123. You cannot beat that. Ladies and gentlemen, 799. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my triple dollar sign. Look, that was Texas for Texas. There it is, triple dollar signed. Ladies and gentlemen, 7980. Ladies and gentlemen, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. You see it for yourself. To win, you need to focus on the fire. Look, it's going to happen. It will manifest 116 to 124 in Texas. Promised. Ladies and gentlemen, 7543. Ladies and gentlemen, triple dollar signed it. Told you would see it in Tennessee between the dates 116 and 124. Ladies and gentlemen, 694. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised 694 would manifest 116 to 124 in Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, 926. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised 926 would manifest in Michigan 115 to 123. Met my deadline date. Ladies and gentlemen, 2346. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I gave it to you 2 times. I promised it and guaranteed it, both in the same prediction. How can you miss? Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I like to show off from time to time. Promised. You see it for yourself. 117 to 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 8702. Nope, 9702. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise the triple dollar sign. Look, to win, you focus on the top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, boom, boom. Triple dollar signed it. Gave you some extra information so you wouldn't have to guess. 120 to 130 in Ohio. And in most cases, I don't practice this shit, but I can make it happen in 24 to 48 hours. Here I go showing off, ladies and gentlemen. Look at me go. Promised twice. You see it for yourself, 121 to 129. Ladies and gentlemen, 573. Ladies and gentlemen, you see it for yourself. Number 1 big money pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, 786. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 big money pattern. That was for Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, 8604. Ladies and gentlemen, you see the number 1 motherfucking big money pattern for Illinois. 3 times. You see it for yourself. Watch me show off. Boom, boom, boom. That's the very last number you see. It's a strategic formula. I am a whole algorithm right here. And you see it right here, doing it every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, 010. Watch this. I promise my only big money pattern on fire would manifest 123. Between the dates 117 and 125, ladies and gentlemen, here you go again. The black sheep is letting you know what number nobody is going to be interested in. So, you see it for yourself. The black sheep did not lie, told us what was going to happen, and it did. You got your 3432. Ladies and gentlemen, number one motherfucking big money pattern. Look, to win, focus on my top 5. You see it, ladies and gentlemen, right? To win, you focus on the top 5. What do you see in the number 1 position? The number 1 position. How many times did I circle Florida? That means it came from Florida. But y'all don't hear me though. 119 to 127, I told you, I do not gamble. I'm not an advocate of gambling. I do not promote gambling. I am so motherfucking good at what I do. All you have to do is do that first number, invest in it, and wait. Between those dates, you will be happy. Straight! Ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, 6, 5. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 motherfucking big money pattern. To win, focus on the top 5 4 digits. I promise the first 2 will manifest 119 to 128 in North Carolina. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, 868, only number on fire, 123. 119 to 127. 649, ladies and gentlemen, number 1 big money pattern, 649. Straight! 121 to 129, invest in it. Ladies and gentlemen, you got your 487. Ladies and gentlemen, I met my deadline. Number 1 big money pattern, Georgia. For Georgia, look, deadline date, mate. Oh man, you got to do that. You have to do that. You got your 7013. Let's take a look at the only motherfucking big money pattern on fire, straight. Georgia, 117 to 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 8745. Ladies and gentlemen, promise the number 1 motherfucking big money pattern, straight in Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 deuce. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 deuce. Promised 121 to 130. Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at today 559. Black sheep didn't lie. 559 was going to be the combination that nobody was going to be interested in. Ladies and gentlemen, 7951. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised today you would see 7951 by the deadline date. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, 029. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my only big money pattern on fire, 119 to 128. Here I go showing off. You see it for yourself, $$, 120 to 128. So again, ladies and gentlemen, you can see me at the winner's table no matter what. And when I say no matter what, I really do mean that. We eat at the winner's table. And if you didn't notice, that number 1 number is a very good choice. Remember, this is investing. It's quantum physics 101, and I have the secrets to winning every single day, multiple times each day. And I prove it in writing, promising and guaranteeing your success. Abundant prosperity in health and in wealth to all who follow me and believe in the hard work that you see me accomplishing every single day without failing. If you know the prerequisites, you can email me at dynamicallydriven@gmail.com. I will then give you the go-ahead, and you can go to dynamicpredictions.onrender.com. You can select the package of your choice. New members get 7 free days valued at $100. So again, when I tell you that a big money pattern is about to drop and you don't listen, you don't pay attention, there's no way that you're going to make it to the store. And I can bet on that. And I don't gamble, but I can bet on that for sure, for real. So if you know what you're doing, then go straight to the website. If you don't know what you are doing and you would like some more vital information, email me at dynamicallydriven@gmail.com. So there's a lot of people asking me questions like, do you do a particular state? I am not answering those questions when it's already in the prediction in capital motherfucking letters. So again, when I tell you that I do all states, and then you ask me, do I do your state? I guess I don't. And I guess I won't. Because you are actually either reading into the prediction or you're definitely leaving your state out. And your state is before the 7 catalyst states that I list. So you're really under a spell. I'll see you guys later. I love you all.